Hello, friends. As most of you know, there has been a lot of controversy surrounding the recent unveiling of the Xbox One and PS4 console systems, with all the different specs and the capabilities, and the non-capabilities. I thought I would take this opportunity to share my thoughts for all of you there who are really interested in my opinion. As most of you are probably aware, Microsoft, although having imbued the Xbox One with some interesting features like Skype and Minecraft, seems hell-bent on making their console pretty much as undesirable as possible, while the folks at Sony just laugh and have a grand time. That being the case, I'm not really going to focus as much on the specs, but on a couple other things that have come out of this whole mess. One thing that I found to be particularly interesting is how the retail industry has drastically changed from what I remember going through training and selling things myself. It seems that the customer service industry has somewhere along the line forgotten about the customer. Ah yes, who can forget the recent scandal surrounding Abercrombie & Fitch, when CEO Mike Jeffries was famously quoted as having said, "The brand is absolutely exclusionary and only markets to cool, good-looking people." That in and of itself isn't such a bad thing. It's when he continued on and said, quote, "In every school there are the cool and popular kids, and then there are the not-so-cool kids. We go after the cool kids. We go after the attractive, all-American kid with a great attitude and lots of friends. A lot of people don't belong in our clothes, and they can't belong. Are we exclusionary? Absolutely." Now, as outrageous as that may be, the difference is that Jeffries is not purposefully trying to alienate his consumer base. He's trying to make them feel like they're cool and inclusive. Microsoft, however, seems to have forgotten that somewhere around 50, if not more percent of its consumer base likes playing used games. In addition, there are a number of people who don't have the capabilities or just don't want to be online all of the time. You know, it's like going to a matchmaker, getting married, having a great time, everything works out, you guys love each other, you go through the ceremony, you get there to your marital bed in the middle of the night, you wake up, and there is the matchmaker. Just there, in your face. You know, there comes a time when the vendor just really doesn't need to be involved anymore. I don't need to be connected to them anymore. If I pay for a game with my money, I want to own the game without having to see Xbox in my face. Now, the second thing, the much more alarming and horrifying thing, in my opinion, this is brought to light for me, which also unfortunately is not a new occurrence, was the whole women's issue that broke out. The organization Feminist Frequency, after having watched the E3 press conference, said in a tweet, "Thanks for revealing to us exactly 0 games featuring a female protagonist for the next generation." A simple enough statement, but the response was difficult to stomach. Of course, there were the usual insults with colorful descriptions of biology. But then there were those that claimed that if more women played video games, then of course more women would be featured in video games. However, according to the ESA, or Entertainment Software Association, 45% of all players are women. Let's take a look at what that looks like. Yeah, that's pretty much half. I guess really what they're saying is they want us to completely take over. The other repeating sentiment I noticed was that women evidently don't belong in video games. Yeah, that is, I guess, a compelling argument. It's a real shame that someone hasn't gotten around to telling, oh, all the women that are making the video games. But hey, maybe they're right. Maybe women don't belong in video games. Now, by no means do I mean to imply that this cross-section represents every guy in gamerdom. I happen to know a lot that are pretty awesome, respectable, sweet, and not jackasses. The problem, however, is that it's acceptable in the community. If it weren't acceptable on some level, if it were taboo, if these people didn't think that way, they would be a little more hesitant about putting it up on Twitter where everyone can see it. The problem is just that the dynamic needs to change, and unfortunately, it's also the craziest ones that are the loudest. So, in conclusion, I'm not so worried about the Xbox One versus the PS4. I've kind of always been a PS girl at heart anyway. For, no, some reasons. And the market will really decide who's the winner. If nobody wants to buy what the Xbox One has to sell, it's either going to come down in price or it's going to flop. The really interesting part to me has been the peripheral carnage that has cropped up around this, as tends to whenever there's controversy. Anyway, thank you so much for wasting a little of your night with me. Hope it was a little bit enlightening or enjoyable, and I hope to see you again soon. He's snoring. I wish I could turn the camera around. It's attached to my computer. He is passed out. Oh, doesn't it just melt your heart?